At 2:47 inches the morning, my phone lit up the entire bedroom ceiling. I remember staring at it from across the room, that familiar, sick feeling settling into my stomach before I even read a single word. 23 missed calls. My mother, 17 from my father, 9 from my brother Derek, 4 from my Aunt Renee, who I hadn't spoken to in 8 months. I already knew, somehow, that whatever was happening on the other end of those calls was not going to be my problem to fix. I just didn't know yet that I'd finally, after 31 years, actually believe that when I said it. Let me back up. My name is Claire, and I am the middle child of 3 in a family that decided somewhere along the way that being responsible was the same thing as being available. Always. For everything. Without question, without warning, and certainly without gratitude. My older brother Derek is 41. He has never held a job for longer than 14 months. He's charming in the way that people are charming when they've spent their whole lives getting out of consequences, big smile, quick with a joke, always has an explanation for why this time was different, why this situation was unfair, why anyone reasonable would have done the same thing. My younger sister Becca is 26, sweet in her own way, but completely under my mother's thumb, which means she mostly just relays information and stays out of the crossfire. And then there's me, the one with the steady job, the one with the savings account, the one my parents call the sensible one, which I've come to understand is just a polite way of saying the one we drain. I work in project management for a mid-sized logistics company in Cincinnati. I have been there 6 years. I have a 1-bedroom apartment that I pay for myself, a 2021 Honda Civic that I also pay for myself, and until very recently, I had $34,000 in a savings account that I had been building since I was 24 years old. That money was for a down payment on a house. That was my plan. That was my future. You can probably guess where this is going. 8 months before all of this happened, Derek called me with what he described as a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity. He always met someone, a guy named Marcus, who supposedly had connections in the restaurant industry and wanted to open a bar and grill concept in Nashville. Derek had always wanted to be in the restaurant business. He talked about it constantly. He just never wanted to do any of the actual work involved. He needed $8,000 to secure the commercial lease and cover initial licensing fees. He would pay me back within 6 months, he said. It was a sure thing, he said. Marcus had investors lined up, he said. I said no. This was new for me. Historically, I would have found some reason to say yes. I would have told myself it was a loan, not a gift. I would have calculated how much I could spare without destroying my savings goal. I would have transferred the money and tried not to think about it. But I had recently started seeing a therapist, something my mother referred to as Claire's little hobby, and I had been working very hard on understanding the difference between helping someone and funding someone's inability to face reality. So I said no. Derek was furious. My mother called me the next day and told me I was being selfish. My father, who almost never involves himself directly, sent me a text that said, "Family helps family, Claire. Remember that." I did not respond. For about 3 weeks, things were cold. Then, gradually, everyone went back to pretending we were a normal family, which mostly meant no one brought it up again and I was expected to move on as though it hadn't happened. 4 months later, Derek announced he was going to Las Vegas for his birthday. This was not unusual. Derek went to Las Vegas approximately once a year. What was unusual was the scale. He had rented a suite at one of the large casino hotels on the Strip. Not a regular room, a suite. He'd invited my parents, my Aunt Renee, 2 of his friends from high school, and Becca. He described it as a milestone celebration because he was turning 40. He had apparently found a way to pay for the suite, because when I asked Becca about it, she said Derek had put it on his credit card and insisted he had it handled. I was not invited. This was not stated directly. I simply was not mentioned when the trip came up. And when I asked Becca if there was a plan for a group dinner or anything I should know about, she got quiet in that way. She does, and said, "I think Derek just wanted it to be a small thing." I said, "Sure," and I meant it. I genuinely did not want to go to Las Vegas for Derek's birthday. I had plans that weekend anyway. My friend Melissa was visiting from out of town. It was fine. They left on a Thursday. I went to work, picked up Melissa from the airport Thursday evening, and we had a genuinely nice couple of days. We went to brunch. We walked around the Cincinnati Art Museum. We made pasta from scratch on Friday night and watched old movies. It was exactly the kind of quiet, uncomplicated weekend I had been craving. Saturday night, Melissa and I had gone to bed early. We were both tired, we'd had one too many glasses of wine at dinner, and I had work Monday morning. I was asleep by 11. At 2:47 a.m., my phone started ringing and did not stop. I looked at the missed calls first. 23 from my mother. I actually counted them because the number seemed wrong. Not a round number, not 2023, which meant she had genuinely been calling repeatedly without stopping. 17 from my father, 9 from Derek, 4 from Aunt Renee. There were also text messages. My mother had sent 11. They escalated in a way I recognized immediately, the way her messages always do, starting with "call me" and ending somewhere near "unhinged." "Call me as soon as you see this. Claire, it's urgent, please call. Something has happened, we need you. Claire, I am not joking, this is serious. We need money wired tonight, there is no other option. Claire, if you love this family, you will pick up the phone." That last one I read 3 times. I set the phone face down on my nightstand and stared at the ceiling for a moment. Melissa, in the living room on my pull-out couch, had not woken up. The apartment was quiet. I picked the phone back up and called my mother. She answered, before the first ring finished. "Claire? Oh, thank God. Something terrible has happened. We need you to wire us money right now, tonight. We cannot wait until morning." Her voice was doing the thing it does when she is genuinely panicked, high and tight, talking faster than usual, not pausing to let me respond. I let her go for a moment. "Mom," I said, "slow down. What happened?" "It's Derek. There was a situation. With the suite. With the casino. I don't have time to explain everything, but we are in serious trouble, and we need at least $12,000 wired by 6 a.m., or they are going to—" "Mom," I said it sharply enough that she stopped. "Start from the beginning." What came out over the next 20 minutes was one of the most breathtaking stories of compounded poor decisions I have ever heard, and I have been listening to this family's stories for 31 years. Derek, it turned out, had not actually handled the suite. He had put a deposit down on a credit card, but had assured the hotel he would be paying the balance, which was substantial, because it was a multi-room suite for multiple nights at checkout. This was apparently something the hotel allowed under certain circumstances, though I still don't fully understand why, and is not relevant to what happened next. What is relevant is that Derek spent the first 2 days gambling. This is also not unusual. Derek always gambled in Vegas. What was unusual was the scale, which seemed to be the theme of this entire trip. He had started at the poker tables, moved to other games, and by Saturday evening had lost significantly more money than he had arrived with. When I say significantly, my mother's number was somewhere around $23,000. I should pause here and note, I do not know where Derek got $23,000 to gamble with. This was one of many questions I did not receive a satisfying answer to. By Saturday night, Derek was broke. Not low on spending money broke, actually, genuinely. Account emptied broke. He had also, at some point during the trip, allowed my father to put $2,400 on a card for dinners, excursions, and miscellaneous expenses. My father told me this part of the story, with a tone that suggested he considered himself a victim of circumstances, which was impressive. The suite balance was still due. My mother told me the number. I wrote it down, $11,840. When Derek went to the front desk Saturday night to explain the situation, there had apparently been a scene. Hotel security was called. My father got involved and made it worse, which he has a talent for. Aunt Renee, who had been drinking since 4 in the afternoon by my mother's account, said something to a security guard that escalated the situation further. By the time my mother was calling me at 2:47 a.m., they had been informed that if the balance was not resolved by 6 a.m., the hotel would be involving the police and potentially detaining them while the matter was investigated. "So we need you to wire the money to," my mother started. "I'm not wiring you money," I said. The silence on the other end lasted maybe 4 seconds. Then, "Excuse me? I am not wiring you $12,000 in the middle of the night because Derek gambled away his money in Las Vegas. That's not something I'm going to do. Claire." Her voice shifted into the register she uses when she wants to make me feel like a child. "This is not the time for this. We can discuss your feelings about Derek later. Right now, your family is in a crisis and we need. Mom, I heard what you said. I understand there's a crisis. I am telling you that wiring money is not how I am going to help you with it. Then what are you going to do? Just let us get arrested? I took a breath. Call the U.S. Embassy. They have a citizen services line specifically for situations like this. They can help you understand your options and connect you with local resources. The embassy? Claire, we don't need the embassy, we need money. I'm also going to give you the number for the American Citizen Services line, which is available 24 hours. And I'd recommend calling your credit card companies about any charges that were made without authorization, because if any of those charges were made on someone else's card without their permission, that is fraud, and there are processes for disputing it. Another silence. Longer this time. What are you saying? My mother's voice had changed. Less panicked, more careful. I'm saying that if any charges were made on any account that didn't belong to the person who authorized it, that's something the card issuer needs to know about. Tonight, I heard her say something away from the phone, muffled, to someone else in the room. Then she came back. Claire, you are being incredibly I'm going to text you the embassy number and the citizen services number right now, I said. I hope everything gets sorted out. I love you. Good night. I hung up. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark for a moment. My hands were completely steady, which surprised me. I had expected to feel the usual wave of guilt and second-guessing. It did not come. I went to my laptop. Here is the thing I had not told my mother, and the reason I had specifically mentioned unauthorized card charges. 3 weeks before this trip, my mother had called me, asking about updating the account information on an old joint account that she and I had technically been listed on together since I was a teenager. One of those things that never got properly closed when I became an adult. I had called the bank about it after that conversation, intending to have my name removed entirely. The customer service representative had flagged something while I was on the phone. A new card had recently been issued to the account. I had not requested a new card. I had immediately frozen the account, filed a fraud report with the bank, and requested an investigation. The bank's fraud department called me back within 2 days. They had found 4 transactions, 3 in the month before the Vegas trip, and one the largest that had posted just days before the trip to a hotel booking site. I will not say the specific number. I will say it was enough to cover a significant portion of a multi-night suite for 6 people in Las Vegas. I had been waiting for the fraud investigation to complete before deciding what to do next. I had not confronted my mother. I had not told anyone. I had kept that information to myself like a stone in my pocket while I watched my family make their plans, board their flights, and check into a suite that I now had very good reason to believe had been partially funded by fraud committed against me. After I hung up with my mother, I opened my laptop and sent an email to the bank's fraud department with a subject line that said, "Update needed Las Vegas hotel booking. Same account." I explained that I now had reason to believe the fraudulent charges had been used to fund a trip that was currently resulting in a hotel dispute in Nevada, and that the parties involved were my family members, and that I was formally requesting that the investigation continue without any intervention from me to resolve the hotel balance. In other words, I was not going to pay the bill, and I was making sure the bank knew exactly why. Then I texted my mother the embassy number, the citizen services number, and one additional thing, the non-emergency contact number for the fraud department at our bank, with a note that said, "They may be reaching out. Please cooperate with them fully." Then I turned my phone on Do Not Disturb, plugged it in on the charger, and went back to sleep. I won't pretend it was perfect sleep. I woke up twice, but I did not pick up the phone, and I did not send any money, and in the morning I made coffee and told Melissa what had happened over breakfast, while she stared at me with increasingly wide eyes. "You're completely calm," she said. "I know," I said. "It's new." The calls continued through Sunday. I let them go to voicemail. By Sunday afternoon, I had 11 voicemails. I listened to all of them, because I wanted to know what I was dealing with. My mother's earlier messages were angry. My father's were cold and disappointed in the particular way he'd perfected over the years, not yelling, just a quiet, heavy tone, meant to communicate that I had failed some fundamental test of character. Derek called once and left a voicemail that was mostly him telling me how serious the situation was and asking if I really wanted this on my conscience, which I found almost funny. Then there was a voicemail from my mother from Sunday afternoon that was different, quieter. She said the bank had called them. She said they'd been told the charges were under investigation. She said they had spoken with someone from the embassy who had helped them understand their options. Her voice was tired in a way I had not heard before, not the exhausted performance she sometimes does to generate sympathy, but genuinely, flatly tired. She said, "I don't know what you think you've accomplished." I saved that voicemail, not out of cruelty, because I wanted to remember that my mother had called what happened something I accomplished, even if she didn't mean it that way. They came home Tuesday, 2 days later than planned, and with significantly fewer personal items than they had left with, because the hotel had held certain belongings as part of the dispute process. I do not know the full details of how that was resolved. I know my Aunt Renee flew home separately and was not speaking to my mother by the time they landed in Cincinnati. I know Derek drove back to Columbus, where he lives, without calling anyone. I know all of this because Becca told me in a long, rambling phone call Wednesday morning where she mostly seemed confused and a little shaken. Becca had been there for all of it. She had watched her brother gamble away money she hadn't known he had. She had watched my parents try to manage a hotel dispute in a foreign business environment. She had sat in a hotel lobby at 3 a.m. waiting for things to be resolved while her aunt argued with staff. "It was really bad, Claire," she said. "I know," I said. "I'm sorry you were in the middle of it. Why didn't you just— you had the money." I had expected this question. "Becca, I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest with me. Did you know about the credit card?" Silence. "The joint account," I said. "The charges. Did you know?" "I didn't know it was your account," she said finally. "Mom said she had a way to cover part of it. I didn't ask." I believed her. Becca is not a schemer, she is, at her core, a person who does not ask questions because she has learned that knowing things means being responsible for them. In a different family, she might have been different. "Okay," I said. "I believe you. Are you going to press charges?" Her voice was very small. "The bank is handling the investigation," I said. "It's not my decision at this point. That's how fraud investigations work." She didn't say anything. "I want you to know," I said, "that this is not about punishing anyone. I froze that account before the trip happened. I reported it before I knew what they were using the money for. I followed the process I was supposed to follow. Everything that's happening now is a consequence of what was done, not something I did to hurt anyone. Mom's really upset with you." "I know. She said you could have stopped all of this. I could have given them $12,000 in the middle of the night and let someone who committed fraud against me face no consequences," I said. "That's technically true, but I'm not going to call that stopping something. I'd call it starting something." Becca was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I think I'm going to start therapy." "I think that's a great idea," I said. It has been 3 months since the Las Vegas trip. The bank fraud investigation concluded, and the findings were submitted. I was told by the bank's fraud team that the matter had been referred to the appropriate parties and that I would be receiving full reimbursement for the unauthorized charges. I did not ask for specifics beyond that, and I was not given them. My mother and I have spoken 4 times. The conversations are short and careful, like 2 people crossing a floor they're not sure will hold. She has not apologized directly. She has said, "Once, I hope you know things were very difficult for us," which I accepted without comment. My father sent me a text 2 weeks after they got back that said, "I hope you're doing well. Things are complicated right now." I replied, "I hope you're doing okay too. I'm here if you want to talk." He has not taken me up on that. Derek, I have not heard from. This does not surprise me. Derek will reappear when he needs something or when enough time has passed that he's convinced himself the whole thing is more or less forgotten. That is the pattern. I know the pattern now. What I keep thinking about, in the months since, is not the trip, or the money, or even the fraud. What I keep thinking about is the moment I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark, at 2:47 inches the morning, and felt my hands not shaking. I had spent so many years believing that being a good daughter, a good sister, a good member of this family, meant being the person who held everything together, meant answering every call, meant wiring money at 3 a.m., meant absorbing the consequences of other people's decisions, so they didn't have to. I don't think that anymore. Being the reliable one is not the same as being the one who takes the fall. Having savings is not the same as having an obligation to spend them on someone else's emergencies. Loving your family does not mean covering their fraud. My therapist said something to me in our session the week after it all happened. She said, "You didn't create this situation. You also didn't rescue them from it." How did that feel? I thought about it for a minute. Like finally putting something down, I said. Something I'd been carrying for a really long time. She nodded. "What do you want to do with your hands now that they're free?" I laughed, which surprised me. "I'm going to buy a house," I said. And I am. I found a 2-bedroom I like in a neighborhood I've always wanted to live in. My down payment, my $34,000 that was always just sitting there according to everyone who felt entitled to it, is exactly where I left it. Every dollar. My family does not get to decide what I do with my own life. They never did. I just stopped pretending otherwise. If you're reading this, and you have someone in your life who treats your stability as their backup plan, I want you to hear this clearly. Your savings account is yours. Your sleep is yours. Your 2:47 a.m. is yours. You are allowed to put the phone down.